Not a single character in the movie, with outside of Caleb, right, has solid motivations for the things that they do. Thomasin, Mom, Dad, the twins, Black Phillip, every last one of them are busted, and it still somehow gets worse from here. Now, in addition to all of that, what makes this question so irritating is the redundancy. Because, again, it's not like the audience were asking this question alongside her. We're not wondering whether Black Phillip really talks to them, just like we didn't spend even a minute wondering if there really was a witch or not. We've known for the entire runtime that there is a very real witch, at least one, possibly more, that they can take the form of animals, and that demons are real. So you can't honestly be expecting the audience to sit here at this late stage in the movie wondering if Black Phillip might be a demon in disguise. There is no doubt in our mind. To call this predictable would be an insult to the clairvoyant.
Oh my God. I am infected with the filth of pride. Dispose of me how thou wilt, yet redeem my children. I beg thee, my Christ. I have not damned my family.
Here's a pretty good scene. Thomasin is in tears, watching her father pray, begging God for her salvation. And it's juxtaposed against an even better scene. Inside the house, Katherine's fully lost her mind, and she's visited by the ghosts of her lost children, or, more likely, demons in the form of her children. She's been broken down so much by the events of the past week that she's finally susceptible to temptation, and with the tempter taking the form of her children, who she desperately wants to be reunited with, she falls. They convince her to sign Satan's book, and the scene ends with her breastfeeding her baby, before we zoom out and see that she's actually being eaten by a bird. Or more likely, a witch in the form of a bird. It's good shit, really harrowing. I really like this scene. I think it's well substantiated, this is a well-earned payoff, and I have to admit, this hard cut to black has fooled me on more than one occasion, thinking that it was the end of the movie. And what an ending it would be. There are a couple of fates unresolved, but I think that this scene sums it up pretty well. The family's torn apart, and they've been picked off one by the forces of evil, until even the most pious of them is torn down. And if it weren't for the crappy foundation that so much of this is built on, this could be a satisfying conclusion, a haunting climax. But unfortunately, it's not over, and William gets up the next day and goes outside to check on the kids. And I love this. Watch the camera. Oh, what's that? What's the camera doing? It's panning up. Why are we doing that? Why are we going up? Boy, I sure hope that nothing happens just outside of the frame. Oh, what do you know? He was gored just off screen. What a tragedy. This is so thoroughly telegraphed that it must make the developers of WildStar blush. Now look, we know that this was done because you couldn't make the attack look convincing, so they needed it to occur off screen. I don't have a problem with that. But you didn't need to do it this way. You could have cut from this shot to a close-up of William's face, maybe. Give us something to watch, something to focus on. Let us see him react to something that's going on in his field of view. You can misdirect our attention away from any threat, but when you're specifically cropping something out of frame, you're actually drawing our attention to it. I know you're doing something because nothing else is going on besides the cropping. But hold on, you will never predict what happens next. So he's been gored off screen, and spoiler alert, he is about to die. He's very conscious of this. He knows he's about to die, he tosses his weapon aside, and he's about to say something. Now, what can he say in this moment, resigned to his mortality? Let's review the options. Option A, say nothing. Your soul is saved by the grace of God and your faith in Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior. You've believed this your entire life. Through the events of the previous day to whatever it is he just walked into, this man has had confirmed for him the existence of the paranormal. He is now certain of the unequivocal existence of demons and God, heaven and hell. With all this, you can now die in peace, knowing that your faith is true and your soul is saved. Option B, call out to God for salvation one last time. Maybe you just want to make doubly sure that you're on good terms, or to beg for the protection of your remaining family. This would be in character, as we saw him do exactly that in his last scene. Option C, renounce God with your dying breath, damning yourself to a hell that you now know is very real. You gain nothing and will suffer for all eternity. Let's see what he chooses.
Corruption, thou art my father.
Oh my goodness, how dramatic. I'm sorry, did this character just relinquish his religion? This character. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but this doesn't sound like a prayer. You heard it, not God the Father. Corruption is my Father. Not Father in heaven, corruption is my Father. So you mean to tell me that this man is fervent enough in his religious beliefs that he's willing to enter into exile and risk starvation rather than abandon them, but once they're confirmed to be true, then he'll abandon them? I mean, I guess that's on theme at this point, characters doing things that are exclusively to their detriment. I've really got to lean on option A here. Like, all you had to do was literally nothing, and you just missed it. Just missed it, buddy. And here's something else. This exile from the colony, being driven from your home, forced to settle in a new land due to a theological dispute, that's why the Pilgrims ended up here in the first place. There's a very direct parallel between the Pilgrims leaving England for New England and the family's experience. We're effectively seeing a miniature recreation of the Pilgrim's journey. It's actually a neat little narrative device. It's just a shame that it's not employed by a better film. Because this does present a character problem as well. If this man did not share the same theological beliefs as the rest of these pilgrims, why did he come here? You joined their religious sect. You sailed across the ocean with them to live in their theocratic colony. Did you think that the fact that you don't subscribe to their theology would just never become a problem? Have you been a dumbass your entire life?
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country. Kindred.
What came we to find? That's a great question. Why did you do this? Why did you do any of this? Now, there are plenty of good reasons why you might have split with the colony, and that it's left ambiguous is a good thing in my eyes, because it doesn't bog down the film with unnecessary theological debates that distract from the plot. But when the plot has characterized him as someone who consistently makes bad decisions, what else am I to think?
I have no thoughts.
Rest in peace, dumbass. You were stupid. So, big twist reveal, the stereotypical Satan goat? Well, what do you know? He is Satan! Thomasin really did explain the entire plot of the movie in that last scene. And now she screams in horror and anguish as Satan gores her father right in front of her. This is really weird because, remind me, what's that scene that's coming up? Oh yeah, she switches to red team not 5 minutes later. Now Katherine comes outside and sees Thomasin and starts yelling at her. I knew it! You're the witch! It's you!
You bewitched thy brother, proud slut!
Oh yeah, it's the little subplot that couldn't. Like I said, this is one of the better setups in the movie, if not the best, and informs us why Katherine has had this bias against Thomasin from the start, supported by these clues. As she's entering adulthood, her adolescent little brother is creeping a little bit. Katherine's noticed this and holds it against Thomasin, seeing her as a tempter of her innocent little boy. But again, if she's supposed to be attentive of things tempting her children, then why isn't she attentive of things tempting her children? And while I'm at it, if Katherine is supposed to be biased to the point that she's willing to let her kids give their souls to Satan, then what's the significance of this scene? This wouldn't be a change in her character. I'm simultaneously meant to believe that she was already like this before this scene, as well as not like this after this scene in order for the movie to make any sense. But that would conflict with the inclusion of this scene. Because if this was a choice, then that renders this scene irrelevant. What choice is being made here if she was already like this? So your options are, the movie is broken now, or the movie was broken then. She's clueless Katherine here, but Puritan mom here. She's satanic Katherine here, but Puritan mom again here. Her bias effects are here and here, but in two conflicting ways. If it weren't for all this broken bullshit, this would explain very well why Katherine is so ready to believe that Thomasin is a witch. It's a solid setup and rewarding to observe. But this reveal, this payoff doesn't work because the setup has already been toggled on and off throughout the whole movie, and we already did a different payoff that actually worked, and now you're undoing it. Because the Katherine who was like this was 20 minutes ago. A scene has occurred between then and now. An important scene. Character development actually happened, and it's been revoked now. You've undone the character development. If this scene were removed from the movie, it wouldn't change a thing because she's the same person before and after. This movie is all over the place, and every busted plot point cancels out and ruins others. I want to like the bias angle, but it simply doesn't work here. I want to love this scene, but it conflicts with what happens before and after. This is supposed to be shocking and moving because we're seeing the fall of this character, but she's been out of character for the entire movie. We are going down the line here, systematically demolishing every character, and we're not finished yet. So Katherine's pissed and starts beating up on Thomasin, so she grabs a conveniently placed knife and stabs her with it. Now the Wikipedia plot summary says, an unhinged Katherine blames Thomasin for everything that has happened and tries to strangle her. In self-defense, Thomasin tearfully kills her mother with a billhook. That is a lie! That is not what happened! Katherine did not attempt to strangle Thomasin until after she was attacked with a knife. She's slapping you. I know that's not nice, but you escalated from a slap fight straight to stab her with a knife. This is now a life or death situation because of a choice that you made. She is now fighting to survive and is completely justified in choking you. I'm kind of rooting for her now because you've made her the underdog in this struggle. Now, when you're simplifying events for a brief plot summary, you're going to lose out on a few of the details that make the scene satisfying. However, misrepresenting the events and the order in which they occur, removing all nuance and reframing this as a simple self-defense situation is both highly dishonest and a disservice to the film. The stage has been set so that Katherine's perspective is pretty reasonable here. Your kids are dead, your other 2 kids are missing, your husband has just been killed, and there's somebody standing there covered in blood. Somebody you didn't trust anyway. Dare I say it, I would probably lunge at this person, try to restrain them, maybe even get a couple shots in at them. It's a very human response. And Thomasin crying out, please stop, I love you, as she's being swatted by her mother is pretty heart-wrenching. You can't help but feel for her, and she's desperate to make this situation stop. Her escalating to lethal force is a little shaky, but you understand that the entire situation is built on shaky ground. It's very volatile. A bad decision in a moment like this is believable. The motivations that lead these characters into a physical struggle are solid, which makes me wonder why somebody would feel the need to misrepresent what's happening here to prop up Thomasin as this wholly blameless victim, innocent of any role in the escalation. The very inclusion of the phrase, in self-defense, to justify Thomasin's actions is fundamentally unnecessary if your goal is to describe a series of events, but is ultimately revealing of the editor's underlying agenda here. Whether this is an act of self-defense is an opinion, an extrapolation of events, and not a recounting of the events themselves. Your personal take is not what belongs in a plot summary. It belongs in an essay, it belongs in a YouTube video, but not in a plot summary. So placing your interpretation of the scene in the plot summary is a tad manipulative, but rewriting the order of events to support your interpretation is outright duplicitous.
Oh.
And if I may be so bold, I get the feeling that the sort of person who does this is likely incapable of enjoying a story about a character who they don't see as wholly blameless, and Thomasin here is anything but blameless. So if we just rewrite the narrative slightly, just a little bit, I can justify my love of this movie. It's just a little white lie. Thomasin's the good guy, I promise. This isn't somebody who wants a good movie. This is somebody who wants to feel good about their movie of choice. They want to feel virtuous and superior about their taste in film, and if they have to lie about the virtues of their chosen protagonist, so be it. And that is they, plural. Because more than one person has done this, and they've been doing it for years. Early versions of this plot summary have all included the self-defense line. Katherine attempts to strangle Thomasin, but in self-defense, Thomasin grabs a nearby knife. A deranged Katherine tries to strangle her daughter, but is killed in self-defense by Thomasin. Katherine tries to strangle her. Thomasin slices her face and then kills her in self-defense. Yeah, she slices her face and then kills her. The face slicing was just for fun. And the deceptive mention of strangling was here too, but for a time it was removed, before another person added it back later. Why are you people like this? What is it about this movie that inspires this sort of behavior? Maybe it's got something to do with this narrative about sexual liberation, patriarchy, and the failure of the Christian God. More on that later. So Thomasin does some stuff and walks around the house. I mean, what do you do after your entire family has been killed by Satan? But it's at this point that I'm realizing we can't have but 5 minutes of movie left, and this hasn't happened yet. So we know it's coming. We already know what's about to happen, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So Satan shows up like, "Hey, bitch, you like butter? I'll get you some butter." And she's like, "Oh, I do like butter. I'll become a witch now." I guess that makes about as much sense as anything else in this stupid fucking movie. What a missed opportunity. Really, if Satan is going to use a food item to tempt Thomasin into witchery, maybe it ought to be, I don't know, the one food item that has been established to be an object of her desire earlier in the film. Oh, but butter. I didn't know that butter was so important to this character. I didn't realize that she's been deprived of butter this whole time by the repressive Christian patriarchy. Right, imagine she walks into the house and, whoa, there's an apple on the table. But I haven't seen an apple since I came over from England. Where did this come from? And Satan strolls in.
"You can have as many apples as you like, bitch, as long as you bring me more babies."
But no, we can't do apples. That would make this feel like a cohesive plot that the writer didn't make up as he went along, so we can't have that. I cannot, for the life of me, care about this scene. And again, I invoke King of Comedy. I'm not impressed when I get to this scene for a second time, because I've already seen this and it's not set up very well. But at least that takes until the second viewing, because it wasn't spoiled on the DVD menu. Because I've already seen this and it's not set up very well. I've already seen this and it's not set up very well. I've already seen this and it's not set up very well. I've already seen this, I've already seen this, I've already seen this, I've already seen this. Hey look, it's Amelia Clark's audition tape.
Show me your boobs!
And there it is. There it is. Screenshot it, print it, stick it on your arm. So let me get this straight. You watched your whole family get killed right in front of you. The brother you loved, the brother you didn't love. You cried out in agony when Satan personally killed your dad, and then immediately you're like, you know, this Satan guy, maybe he's got a point. Remember crying for your father? Remember being moved to tears by his love for you? Am I misreading this? Was she really crying about butter?
What will you from me?
Dost thou see a book before thee?
I cannot write my name.
I will guide thy hand.
Now, how powerful of an ending would it be if she rejected this offer? If she came face to face with temptation, confront it, really consider it, and still walk away? Imagine it, thematically mirroring the opening of the film, her striking out on her own, unwilling to compromise her morals, unwilling to bow to her oppressors. A better, stronger person than her mother ever was. But of course, I'm reminded that all of her problems were created by her because the writer needed her to be retarded, so what's one more retarded choice? She's a witch now. Well, my 2 kid brothers were killed by witches, and my 2 twin siblings were possessed by Satan. Satan himself gored and killed my dad. I guess I'll just become a Satanist? I guess I'm evil now. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's The Witch, a New England folktale. Because yeah, that's definitely what this is. These are the oral traditions that the Pilgrims passed down. I'm sure they sat around the dinner table, regaling everyone with this uplifting tale. Hey, Squanto, pass the cranberry sauce. Oh, hey, did you hear the one about the unbaptized baby who got ground into fucking paste? If there's one thing we know about the settlers of the time, it's that they were very forward-thinking and open-minded people who must have enjoyed the theological debate that arose from this story. I'm sure they really liked the part where Satan wins.
Remove thy shift.
Okay, now tell me honestly, does what I've just described to you sound like a great film?
I love horror films. I love a good horror film. And walking out of this theater, man, was I pumped because I saw a great one.
What's great? I hate asking that, but what's great? This scene? Is this line great? How about this dialogue? How about this dialogue?
The Witch is directed by Robert Eggers and stars Anya Taylor-Joy. I believe I said her name correctly.
Anya, Taylor, and Joy are 3 perfectly normal English names. What could you possibly be mispronouncing?
One of the things I love so much about this movie is that it's not just about a witch. It's not just horror conventions and cliches and tropes that we're used to seeing.
Actually? In-universe, in the narrative, these are tropes. And the horror cliche of dumb characters making dumb choices permeates this thing. How about the part where they split up because one character runs off alone into the haunted woods?
It's really about how a terrible situation brought on by a supernatural entity affects a family.
Is it, though? Is it really? It's more about how a teenager framing herself for murder affects a family, despite the actions of the supernatural entity. Which also doesn't matter because a normal wildlife entity could have just as easily killed a baby and nothing would have changed. The fact that it's a witch itself has no effect here. And even Samuel's death has no effect because the characters don't actually behave as though it happened, and it's overwritten by another character's witch abduction later in the movie. Samuel could have been taken out of the story. Thomasin could have still claimed to be the Witch of the Wilds, and we'd have gotten the exact same plot, minus the mockery of a dead baby. The plot would be in a better state if this supposed inciting incident were just removed from the film, and that is not a good thing.
This movie is more so about this family tearing themselves apart when one family member gets snatched away by said witch. They don't know if there's something in the woods.
Not only do they suspect that there's something in the woods, not only do they know that their baby was taken to the woods, not only do they not look for him, but if they didn't know that there was something in the woods, then why were the woods forbidden? And again, why are you living on the edge of Mirkwood if you believe there are witches inside?
They're unsure of what's going on, and they all start to suspect one another.
Actually, they begin to suspect Thomasin specifically, because she confessed to a murder that she did not commit. No, wait. Actually, they begin to suspect Thomasin because she prays too hard, because I guess that makes her a demon.
They're stuck on this small little farm, and it becomes very suspenseful and very tragically dramatic because you see this entire family's foundation erode because of this witch, but none of them really know what's actually going on.
The adversary off comes in the shape of a he-goat and whispers, aye, whispers, he is Lucifer.
Oh yeah, they know exactly what's going on, but just forget about their religion for most of the movie.
And that's why this film was so great. It wasn't just about something scary, it was about how that scary thing can have an effect on a family.
I mean, I wouldn't say that she's scary. It's weird that you would describe her that way.
Also, what's great is the depiction of the witch. The way it's used, I won't get into it because you just have to experience it, but the way they set up this character.
The setup? Set up what? They just dumped her ass out 6 minutes in.
The way they set up this character and the way she was able to do certain things was really great. I was enthralled by that aspect of the movie. It really, really got under my skin in the best type of way.
I really don't know what you're referring to here. What things? What type of ill things do the witch do that was so breathtaking? Are you referring to this scene? Because the grand conjuration here was not exactly set up. It's just a power that the witch pulled out of nowhere. I don't have a problem with that especially. I believe this is within her bag of tricks, but it's not strongly set up. I wish you'd elaborate a bit.
As for issues...
Oh, what are the issues going to be? Please talk about the goat song. Please.
As for issues, the first act is a little slow. There is about 20 minutes where you're like, where's this movie going? And once you realize that it's really more about the family, it starts to make more sense. Because for about 20 minutes there, you're like, let's get going here. Let's get going. The first 10 minutes were amazing. There's some incredible cinematography. But then it gets a little bit slow for a minute.
What do you have, the attention span of a fucking goldfish? You were just clapping like a seal here, and as soon as the baby gore was off screen, you were lost? As soon as the characters are talking, you just don't understand what's happening anymore. The audience I saw the movie with weren't just losing interest at a fast and alarming rate, they were rejecting it so loud and aggressively that they just about ruined my experience of seeing the movie. First of all, that's awful. And Jeremy Johns said something similar as well.
I was in an auditorium full of a bunch of stoner teenagers, and they were like, all right, let's get scary. It wasn't really like that. And they all walked out like, what the fuck? This movie is a period piece that happens to have some witchcraft elements that start subtly happening to this family.
Leslie Coffin here also talks a good deal about how the marketing was mishandled, advertising this movie as a horror film rather than a drama, and suggests that these misconceptions affected her enjoyment of the movie, if not the quality. Did I ever buy in? Honestly, no. There's a lot in this review that comes across as fence-sitting or even flip-flopping as we bounce between I didn't buy in, it felt strangely hollow, the movie fires a little off-course most of the time, and it's good, it's well made. The film, with its slow and patient mood, seems to make sharp shifts that are motivated more out of a need to build tension than anything else. Yes, that is correct. That is accurate. The movie makes what I consider one fatal flaw. One fatal flaw, you say? I'd love to hear about that fatal flaw, but instead of telling us, she follows that line with, "The Witch is an exceptionally well-made movie." She doesn't explore what the negatives are, just pays vague lip service to their existence, and ultimately concludes that it's a good movie, well made, with moments of greatness. The Witch is a solid, compelling, thought-provoking movie. Yeah, it provoked some thoughts out of me, but solid it is not. Oh, look who's back.
Looking back at 2016, what would you say your favorite film was?
The Witch.
Look at that reaction. What is that? He looks like he's gagging, like he's about to throw up because that's such a bad take.
The VVitch.
The VVitch. The Vitch is my favorite movie of the year. I love it. I think it's a masterpiece.
What the fuck?
Some of these movies
You think it's a masterpiece? I have never in my life given a shit about Red Letter Media, and I have never felt more secure in my apathy than I do right now.
You've also seen The Witch, right?
I don't know if I'd say it was my favorite movie of the year.
Oh, good. This guy's got some sense.
I would say it's the best movie of the year.
That's worse! That's worse! What an insult to every other movie that came out that year, to any writer who actually crafted a plot that makes a lick of sense.
There's not a lot in terms of story,
No.
which is I usually like a really cohesive narrative where I'm like, okay, I know what's happening.
What an endorsement. It's really weird you can't praise the story. Is it because it's bad or something? Why is that?
It's a edge of your seat, but not in an action-packed kind of way movie. It's a, oh my God.
It was like exciting, but not like that kind of exciting, but I was like, oh my God.
Are you okay?
I loved it. I thought it was visual. I thought it was breathtaking. And then I farted a lot.
So how is it that such a disparate roster of respected critics all came to the same general conclusion on this movie and gave it a thumbs up? Leslie Coffin, Jeremy Johns, This Prick, Jay and Silent Bob, CJ and Rags. I don't know if a single one of these people want to be on this list with the others. How did this happen? Now, I've got a very simple theory here, and you already know what it is. The majority of people who have watched this movie have not watched it with subtitles. It is very easy to watch this movie and enjoy it too if you literally do not know what the characters are saying. If you are not aware of how broken the dialogue is, you cannot judge it critically. That's where this comes from.
The Witch is a terrifically suspenseful film with a very good story.
This is wrong, but I'd somewhat understand a conclusion like this. We know Chris Stuckman went into the theater a single time, and came home and recorded just his general thoughts on the movie. And I doubt his theater was playing it with subtitles. And as for Leslie Coffin, I don't really think she's flip-flopping. I think she's making a clear distinction between her subjective enjoyment of the film and its objective quality. But she seems unwilling to really explore what inhibited her enjoyment, or question the general consensus on its quality, which I think are all symptoms of simply not having a firm grasp on what was in the movie, due to the language barrier. And if you didn't understand the movie, that's not your fault. I'm not insulting you by saying that. I'm just trying to rationalize this. You can't quite understand what's being said, and operating under the best of faith, you trust that what's being said has to make sense. That there was no way that it was this fundamentally broken. And there's value in first impressions. I will take this as a day one response. There is more value in this as a form of expression than there is here 10 months down the line. Oh yeah, I saw it. It was the best movie of the year. It's a masterpiece. I don't even know what the character said. I didn't check. I just think it's probably a masterpiece. To condemn a year's worth of other films to prop up one that you have not even taken the time to analyze beyond a surface-level lack of comprehension. I don't know what's worse, if you watched it once and just ignorantly claimed it was a masterpiece, or if you watched it multiple times and the neurons just never fired in such a way that you realized, hey wait, there's actually a problem with this scene. It's cool to share a casual chat with friends, but maybe you could put in more than the minimal amount of effort that's on display here before you post it up and make yourself look like an ass on the internet. I put a lot of time and effort into making myself look like an ass on the internet. I'd appreciate it if you could at least show the same level of commitment. Checking to make sure that the dialogue functions is like the baseline level of research to confirm whether this is a film of quality. However, I can still very much believe that a lot of people either didn't consider that they might need to, or perhaps simply didn't have the opportunity to do so. I hope that's the case with all of these folks, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I can still trust that these are people operating from an honest lack of information. I want to extend this same benefit of the doubt to these Wikipedia editors, but I can't. These are people who have deliberately deleted corrections to falsify chronology for the sake of supporting their own narratives about sexual repression and whatever else. This is not an honest mistake. These are not honest people. And yes, I have to include them in the conversation when talking about criticism. The Wikipedia page isn't an aggregate of information about the movie. The page is itself a review of the film. There's a section here just called Analysis, and it's not the collection of quotes and citations that you see further down the page. It's a very subjective review and interpretation of the movie written by an anonymous Wikipedia editor. How it made them feel, what this particular scene means, and why the movie is good. You know, things that aren't a matter of fact, or may actually be false, but now I'm left to argue with an unknown person posting conjecture posing as objective fact. Because the author of this review did not publish it under their own name, but instead decided to pass off their personal interpretation of the movie as a matter of encyclopedic record. It's a very dishonest misrepresentation of opinion as fact, as a tactic to falsely set yourself in a place of authority from which to argue under the guise of objectivity. Now, how's that different from what I do? I've talked a good deal about my opinions, but I've made it clear what are opinions. It is a fact that the witch is revealed early into the movie. It is my opinion that this was a bad choice. It's definitely a choice that was made, and I think that it was a bad one. I can even argue that it's a choice that damages the movie, and support my argument with references. You know what's in the movie, you know what I'm referring to, you know what my opinions and arguments are, because I do not obscure the fact that they are coming from me by writing them as if they were a Wikipedia article. Now, I could edit the Wikipedia article and write, Katherine, who is a Puritan Christian, is present as her daughter sings a song about how the family's billy goat, Black Phillip, is her king, and she does not react to this. And all of that would be accurate, but I don't think that a Wikipedia article is the place for this discourse. I could write my own interpretation of the ending of the film, as the author did here, and it would be just as valid, because neither belong in a Wikipedia page. So what motivates a person to do this? What manner of sycophant devotes their time online to gaslighting people just to artificially prop up their own personal media idol? Wait, why is that on screen? You're not painting a very flattering portrait of your side of the discussion by employing a tactic like this. It would be odd for you to do this if you were right. One might think that if you were right, then you wouldn't need dishonesty to maintain consensus. Have you considered for just a minute that if everyone disagrees with you, you might be wrong? Considered and disregarded. I do not care if I am the only person alive willing to have an honest conversation about any topic I'm analyzing. I would still do it. The appeal to popularity is not an argument. The 90% of critics on Rotten Tomatoes who review the film favorably can be wrong. I'd wager that most of them are. I don't care how many people are wrong. All I can do is observe what happens in the movie and comment on it. But even this logical fallacy still has an ounce of truth to it. Most people do disagree with me. And worse, these negative reviews are tripe as well. Boring. It's boring. Wouldst thou like to fall asleep? The storyline is just plain boring. Am I the only person on the planet who actually paid attention to this movie? Did people's eyes just glaze over when they got to this scene? Or this scene? Or this scene? Anyone have anything of substance to say? The entire movie is built on religious babbling and paranoia, old-time superstitions, and no real substance. Not really. This isn't a story about paranoia or religious zealotry. It's a story about well-founded fears of a very real threat that is exactly what the religious zealots fear it is, but are selectively blind to. It's really dumb. You might even say that the religious fervor has no impact on the plot. It doesn't build on anything. It doesn't build to anything. I mean, shit. What would be a more interesting story is if the family weren't religious and still became convinced of a supernatural threat, but that would actually employ paranoia as a plot device, and the movie simply isn't interested in doing this. The movie simply isn't interesting. You get the idea really fast, and after that, there's nothing. No story, no character development, nothing. I love the attitude, man, but it's not that there's no character development, it's that the characters and their development make no sense. It took me 2 days to finish watching the movie because I was bored. Okay, I have to admit I do enjoy hearing this. You spend the whole movie waiting for the witch thing to happen, thinking there'll be a big finale. Actually, I only spent a couple of minutes.
Oh, there's a witch. There's a witch, and it's doing something completely fucking vile in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
This film has already been branded a horror film for cinephiles, which is a way for the so-called cinephiles to elevate themselves, in their own minds, to a status of mental superiority and yeah, correct! Agreed! The Witch is nothing special. It's nothing enjoyable, nothing memorable, and nothing that's worth revisiting at any point in the future. Yes! What began as a promising movie missed the mark entirely. Kinda? No? This movie was so painfully boring that every passing minute felt like torture. No! The story could have been engaging and truly suspenseful. Yeah. But by the time the movie decides to actually do something with itself, it's too late. Storyline. Missing. This movie is awful. In the beginning is very interesting, but not catchy. The environment is weird and artificially darkened. I'm pretty sure this is right. It's noticeable in a few spots. There's an old witch you see at first, then you see her younger, but you never see her again. That is a hole in the story. That's not right. The witch shows up again. It's irrelevant. I didn't talk about it because it's irrelevant, but it does happen. The problem isn't that it doesn't happen. The problem is that it doesn't matter. People like this movie? It's crap. The storyline awful. There is more to a good horror movie than atmosphere. This movie has an awful ending. The characters are nuts. A family is forced out of a religious community. They go and live in woods, where there is coven of witches. This could have been a good movie if it was not so badly written. Do not waste your time, and do not waste your money. Do not see this movie. It is a big stinky pile of poo-poo. It is just poo-poo. Poo-poo, poo-poo, poo-poo. It is not scary at all. It is just poo-poo. It is poo-poo with pee-pee on top. Do not see it. How is this the best review? How is this the best? This is the best, most accurate review. No spoilers here, because I don't think the film actually has an ending or any plot reveals. At least not any that could be explained. There's a moronic family that gets kicked out of their village in the opening scene. They speak in a sort of pseudo-post-Elizabethan English, and they don't use electricity or lawnmowers. One thing we do know is that they are ultra-religious. Lots of talk about Jesus and hell, but that's pretty much the extent of what I could make out of the dialogue. Apparently, as the title suggests, there's a witch somewhere in the wilderness. There's also lots of goats, which is nice, but not enough to save the film from itself. As the film faded to black, I wondered, what's the significance of the staring rabbit? Who is Black Phillip? I don't understand, but the film isn't interesting enough for me to search out answers. So the pee-pee poo-poo guy agrees with me, and this guy's just in it for the goats. I respect that. Like, I'm personally overjoyed to see negative reviews for this movie, but they aren't above criticism. Possibly the most cathartic for me, though, has to be the one guy on Wikipedia who lobbied to have that garbage analysis section scrubbed from the page. This section needs a full rewrite. Sex, outside of the preteen who is now hitting puppetry... Puppetry? I gotta tell you, man, I've seen this movie a few times. I'm pretty confident there aren't any puppets. But sex is not a theme of the movie, nor is patriarchal society, her mother having as much control over her as her father. Arguably more. The father being a beta cucktard is actually a plot point. But by all means, yeah, just declare sex is a theme of the movie. I don't know who, I don't know what, who needs references? I think childhood obesity is a theme of the movie. I will not elaborate. Her acceptance of the devil at the end does happen, following an entire movie of the devil/witch manipulating and murdering her family, causing the hatred and but I say again, the devil and witch manipulation has so little impact on the plot, if any. All that really drives it is Thomasina's thirst for baby blood.
No! Horrible fancy thirst!
Thomas is still south.
Silence.
After my first viewing of this movie, I felt that it was a pretty moving and disturbing story about a character who's driven to the evils of witchery by the evils of religious zealotry. How bad Christians can drive innocent people into the arms of the devil. That's a really powerful concept, but unfortunately it's not an accurate read and stands in opposition to the film. This is more a story about what happens when you aren't hypervigilant and wary of satanic behavior in your literal backyard. It's very pro-satanic panic. Like, it's pretty clear. If you aren't wary of your goat, it might be Satan. Somebody go stick that in the Wikipedia analysis. So then this dummy replied with, "Films are up for interpretation. You don't have to agree, but what is written here is all valid." And our hero replied, "See previous removal."
That was the energy I got from that.
What was stated has nothing to do with the film. You cannot reasonably attribute any film's plot to random events and ideas, and putting out on Wikipedia as if it was official stated by the producers is unacceptable. This guy gets it! But unfortunately, the analysis section was ultimately restored with this accompanying message. Films are up to interpretation. Just because you disagree doesn't mean this isn't a valid one. Translation here, I like the movie, I like when people say nice things about it, there are no standards for my side of the discourse. You are intentionally sidestepping the question of whether it's appropriate to include an interpretation here for the sake of validating the interpretation alone. And it's weird that you would refer to this interpretation as valid. Are you suggesting that some interpretations are not valid? What makes an interpretation valid? Simply whether or not it makes you personally feel good? If there's a discussion to be had on whether or not an interpretation is valid, maybe it doesn't belong on Wikipedia. Of course, if the witch has taught us anything, it's that the substance doesn't matter. Why should the plot make sense on the Wikipedia page if it doesn't make sense in the movie? Why should the discourse around themes make any sense if the movie doesn't? Look, I would love to watch a good movie about a witch, but this is not it. These are not themes and concepts that I'm unfamiliar with or unreceptive to. I can quote Black Sabbath because I listen to Black Sabbath. I can reference Candlemas and Reverend Bazaar because this is my culture. Tales of witchery and the occult, demonic horrors and spiritual struggles. This is subject matter that I take seriously, and I want to see it handled well. I'm just gonna butt in, but if you're like this guy and you just like goats, go listen to Goat Machine. These guys are great. And if you want to hear something that's actually emotionally gripping and actually competently written, something that treads the same ground as The Witch, the death of a family member, a loss of faith, the temptations of Satan, a fall to occultism, you might check out Ghost Reveries by Opeth. Horror, action, tragedy, all conveyed through music alone. Even without a visual component, this album paints a better picture in the mind than The Witch provides on screen. There's a song on here about a guy who's reading a letter from another character, and you don't get to hear the contents of the letter, but instead you get to hear his reaction to what he reads and his interpretation of it. We learn about him in the process. And with as deep as his analysis of the letter goes, we see that he's presumably read it several times over, to the point of analyzing the pen strokes on the page itself and what they mean. You're effectively getting two stories at once through this lens of limited information. Reminds me of a certain movie about a lighthouse. The whole thing is some sort of concept album about the occult, I guess, which sounds absurdly cliched, but since you can't understand what he's saying half the time, it doesn't matter. A movie this bad ought to have been the early death of this man's filmmaking career, but due to a heap of undeserved praise for the movie, he stayed afloat. And this video's got a happier ending this time around, because I like to think that he looked at the movie and all its flaws and continued to hone his craft, because they put out a real treasure afterward. I hold out hope that The Lighthouse wasn't a fluke, that it won't stand out as the solitary gem in a long line of duds, but that this movie will be the standout picture of his career. The one dud in a long line of great films. Present company unaccounted for. So by all means, grab your DVD, your 60 FPS, 4K, Blu-ray, Warhammer 40K, pop it into your PS2 or Sega Genesis, put on the movie, appreciate what it does right. Marvel over the writing style, the costumes and the set design, right? The acting. the cinematography. But there is a difference between good stories and bad stories, and you can't just paint over a broken plot with flowery dialect and expect that... Wait, why is that on screen? So don't tell me it's a great movie. Don't tell me the dialogue is good or the characters are well written. Don't tell me that this is okay. And whatever you do, do not tattoo the movie on your arm, you idiot.